is. And Kamala Harris had an issue that followed her from the first time that she ran for president. It's the issue that put her in a position where she was that caused her to be standing on a stage with President Biden, who then became her running mate, but at the time was her opposition. So as she stood on that stage to run for president in 2019, she called him a racist. She basically talked about being bused and all that stuff, and she called him a racist. And her issue was never her base as it relates to just like the hardcore progressive Democrats are going to vote Democrat no matter what, and Republicans. But her issue is always... Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's kitchen table topic is the deceitfulness of politics. The deceitfulness of politics. You know, watching the deceitfulness of politics, it has certainly caused me to increasingly feel sadness for politics and government, and ultimately all of us as voters. I've watched the deceitfulness kind of manifest and grow. It's taken on different forms, but I can definitely speak to some things that I have seen in my years of being in politics. So in my opinion, the deceitfulness of politics is just really, really sad to watch. And I want to put an emphasis on the term watch, because having been behind the scenes, still kind of working behind the scenes, I do see things through a different lens. And so I like to watch it. And what I've seen is just that there's been a influx of deceit as it relates to messaging, as it relates to being honest in general, and transparency and authenticity. And so I'd like to say that I'm watching this, and it's really sad because most people who are being affected by it are also those who are not understanding that the play is being ran. So they don't even see it. And so it's really insightful when I provide this information, or where you get it from anywhere else. So I'm going to highlight some information that has come out around this election in this particular show, so that I can show you certain things. And hopefully when you see it, when you hear it in other forms, or when you see it in different ways, you'll be able to recognize it, because it will register to you just a little bit, just from listening to ways in which it has been played, it has been ran in this past election. So it's important to know that in many cases, the plot that we see of deceit has been ran and has been designed for months, and in some cases years before it ever hits the public. And from seeing these exaggerated stories, like people going to war, winning these medals of honor that they never received, to people lying about past positions, and in some cases their ethnicity, which we saw during the Kamala Harris campaign. This type of deceit is not uncommon, but it's definitely increasing. And no matter where the deceit lies, I have seen it far too many times. I personally believe that our political process has turned into this fight between public figures, and the public figures kind of treat all of us, the voters, like we're the children in this really bitter, bad divorce that's going on. But it's almost like, go and sit over there to the side. We know what's best for you. Let us fight. Let us figure all this out. And then you'll somehow get it at some point. I don't know if you're experiencing that, but I have absolutely seen that, and I don't like it. Until now, this past election, the people have spoken. The people have said that they are no longer wanting to be a part of these cliques and these groups and being marginalized and thrown into these categories. They don't want to be progressive. They don't want to be MAGA. They don't want to be a rhino or an extremist or an establishment. They just want to purely be Americans. They want to be Americans that fight for the American dream, that fights for our Constitution, that fights for what we stand for as a whole, restore our economy, stop the gender nonsense, and stop all these crazy turf wars. That is what we saw in this last election, and that's what I think we're going to see going forward. As Americans, we just don't bow down to those who represent us. We choose them and we hold them accountable. That is the American standard. That is the American way. And that is the standard that I support as an American. So why is this topic so important today? Because I have almost 15 years of political experience. I've worked mostly behind the scenes. It wasn't until about 7 years ago that I became more of a public figure, and I became more of put myself in front of the camera. It wasn't until after the 2018 election that I actually started going on TV heavily. So there's been a lot of experience that I've had behind the scenes, and I've assisted dozens of campaigns behind the scenes on both sides of the aisle, believe it or not. I know people who are on the Democrat side as well as the Republican side. When I lived in East Point, Georgia, it was a predominantly Democrat area. There weren't any Republicans running for office. There weren't any Republicans who were involved in the political process in those local races. So I did assist people who have carried the Democrat the D, but at the same time, I looked at the character of heart. I looked at their desire for the community. I looked at so many other issues, and I was able to support them, knowing that they did not necessarily represent my political values, but I did not disengage from politics because I was in an area that did not have Republicans. And I'm glad I didn't, because it really taught me a lot. And I was able to see what happens on both sides of the aisle. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to let you hear snippets from an interview with a DNC Finance chair, a committee member, a DNC Finance Committee member. Her name is Lindy Li, and she was interviewed by Fox News host Will Kane on his podcast, and I thought it was really good. Please check out his podcast because it was a really good interview. Even though it was quick and short, I would love to have heard more, and I hope he has longer versions. I haven't seen him, but I hope he has much longer versions of his stuff. But anyway, on his podcast, but it was in it. I just think it was just too good not to share with you, because there was just information that she talked about that I really want to kind of address. And rather than letting you just listen to the entire interview straight through, I did pull out some relevant portions, and I'm going to provide a little bit of commentary around it, just so that you can hear it from my perspective regarding the discussion, along with a little bit of some behind the scenes information that can lend some context to the discussion, because there are things that she talks about that I know that the common voter is not going to understand, as far as finance and laws and rules and things of that nature. However, it's important for you to know what happened, because I learned something listening to her, and I went and did my research, and I'm going to share it with you. But I did my research, and I was like, oh my goodness. But anyway, so while you're doing all of your last minute shopping, and I hope that's what you're doing while you're listening to this, or you're heading to a church service, if you're on the radio when you're listening to me and my encore episode that airs at 9 a.m. on Sundays, just continue to tune in, because you're going to hear a little bit of some political behind the scenes. I think that'll be pretty insightful for you, while also you'll hear some of the financial decisions that were made by the Harris campaign that has been talked about, but we're going to talk about it a little bit in depth, because I know that the media kind of blasted this a few weeks ago, but I like to take time and ponder on things. I like to hear from several different people. I want to make sure I got a clear understanding of what happened. And I really think I do have it. And I personally don't think that it was poor financial management, the way they spent their money. I think they spent their money in the right way. But I don't think a lot of people understand why that was the right way. And I believe that it was mostly because of the negative sides of populism. So I'm going to break all of that down towards the end of the show. After I show these clips, after I give a little bit of commentary, I want to show you exactly where I stand and why I believe that I kind of understand why she spent the money the way she spent it. So after the break, we will dive in. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today we're talking about the deceitfulness. Our table topic is the deceitfulness of politics because it's so deceitful. Let me give you a personal story. So when I was on the TV show, The Georgia Gang, I was not the MAGA voice during this particular election. That was my counterpart, Phil. He was more of like the MAGA voice, the Trump voice, the hardcore, Republican voice. Whereas I played more of more of a moderate Republican space, even though I do share a lot of the far right perspective on things. I don't share all of them. And I am one of those people who are not necessarily caught up in the cliques and the clubs and the groups. I don't really care to be a part of MAGA. I don't care about the names and the titles and all that stuff. I care about good policy because the person that's representing the policy changes. So I am a policy person. I've always been like that. I will criticize as well as praise. It's just who I am. So that is who I was on the Georgia Gang. And I would see comments where people would say I'm not Republican enough at times, or I'll see things where people are like, oh, I really enjoyed this. And I personally feel like if I'm getting equal criticism on both sides of the aisle, then I'm doing the right thing. That being said, when I joined the state election board, all of a sudden the media started writing about the decisions I was making, which I have talked about and I've explained in several other videos. If you want to see those, you can certainly click here and you'll be able to listen to that one. But do it after the show. Okay. That being said, when I joined the state election board, I knew that there were potential for the media to attack me because regardless of what decision I make, there's going to be people upset on both sides of the aisle. However, what I was a little shocked about was the fact that I was labeled as a MAGA extremist, which was absolutely hilarious, particularly to Republicans, because there were a lot of Republicans who were like, I wish she was a MAGA extremist. I'm trying to make her a MAGA extremist. But that was not the case, but that's how they wrote about me. And then there were people who I respected who were very, very silent during this time. And their silence really caused me to start to look at things a little bit differently. These are people that I once respected. These are people who I saw, sign letters asking for me to be removed, but never picked up the phone to call me. And that just really threw me. But the most egregious is when I got a phone call from an AJC writer who was in the room several times in every meeting just about. And he explained to me that something that he wrote, well, in the conversation, we talked about several different things, but what came up was the fact that he wrote something that was incorrect. It was inaccurate. He called our meeting that we had illegal, and it wasn't. And I said to him, I said, this is not illegal, and you know it. And he said, yeah, I did find out that. I don't think it's illegal. I said, are you going to correct it? Are you going to fix it? And he was like, no, I'm not. I'll fix it when the lawsuit's dismissed, that the people that are suing you. And I thought that was the craziest thing. I'm like, wait, you're telling me that you know this is inaccurate, or that it could possibly be inaccurate, but you're going to continue to say that it is accurate until a lawsuit is dismissed? This is crazy. However, to this day, they have yet to have written about it. They have yet to have fixed it. And I can still find articles with that inadequate. I can still find articles that are categorizing me inadequately and describing me in ways that does not fit my politics or who I am. But I still find these articles out there, and it's just beyond me. The point I'm making is that what's worse is that when you start doing these things, when you throw deceit into your political strategy, what's worse is that you create narratives that other people believe, and then that becomes their story. And it becomes their story because they haven't had the privilege to meet me. So then the big question is, why does it feel like it's acceptable rather than despised? Why does it feel like people will read things and they're like, I question that, but I'm still going to hold on to it, or I'm still going to share it, or I'm still going to use it as a weapon against the other side? So as I stated before, our political process has turned into a fight between public figures. It's the fight between public officials, between parties, political parties, and us as voters. We're now just the children. They've thrown us in the corner. Oh, go sit down. Go and just watch us fight until we get this divorce, and then you'll decide. We're fighting over who's going to take the kids, who's not, all that craziness. That's what it feels like. So that being said, come, children, to all of you, I am asking you to come on in and let's eavesdrop on this interview between Fox News host Will Cain and Lindy Li, who was part of the Harris 2024 National Finance Committee and is currently on the DNC National Finance Committee. And I'm going to let you listen, and I will come in from time to time to just give a little bit of my insight and to just give you some behind the scenes information based on my understanding and a little bit of my experience. So let's go.
Lindy Li was a part of the Harris 2024 National Finance Committee. She had several leadership positions within the campaign for Kamala Harris. In fact, Lindy, good morning to you. Nice to see you again today. Can we start with you kind of sharing with my audience, what roles did you have within the DNC or within the campaign for Kamala?
Well, I'm absolutely shocked, but I actually still have those roles. I don't know how. I'm getting the emails, I'm getting the updates. So it is now the DNC National Finance Committee. So they had a fundraising agreement between the DNC and the Harris campaign that allowed them to bypass a $3,300 contribution. So one person can give like $929,600. But now, since the campaign is over, it is now just the DNC National Finance Committee, which I'm still very much on wow. So I also serve as women's chair and Mid-Atlantic Regional Chair and senior advisor, et cetera. So it's been a crazy time. Every day there seems to be another revelation. And I can't believe, Will, that our interview went just like insanely viral across the world.
So to help anyone out who isn't plugged into politics on a day-to-day basis, and titles don't necessarily paint the full picture, what did you do for Kamala Harris?
So in order to qualify for the National Finance Committee, you needed to have raised like millions of dollars. And I did that, not only in terms of big donors, but also grassroots donors. I helped to organize something called Geeks and Nerds for Harris. We had like Mark Hamill and like Ron Perlman and Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, involved to raise money. You raise like $500,000 for that. So I didn't just work with ultra wealthy people, but like regular everyday Americans. And that's why I feel a grave sense of responsibility. I don't want to see their money going towards like $100,000 for a call her daddy set.
What do you say to those who are like, why is she saying all of this about her former friends on Fox?
All right. So number one, I think a nuance has been lost. My point is they were telling us they were going to win when they knew they were going to lose. So that's the key point. So at what point did they know they were inevitably going to lose and they still asked us for millions of dollars? That is my question, because that's what I mean by being misled. What sort of internal polling did they have access to? And actually, Jackie Heinrich brings up a really good point. The Doug Emhoff, who was kissing Kamala Harris on Monday night on the forehead, was kissing a woman who knew she was about to lose, not the next president of the United States. I thought that was a really interesting insight. So when did they know? Basically, the age-old question, who knew and when did they know it?
It sounds to me, and I don't want to feed you the answer to my own question, but I am listening to what you've already said, that you feel some sort of moral obligation to the people you raised money from that you feel like was betrayed by those behind the campaign that knew they were going to lose, and yet were still sending you out there to make promises and raise millions?
Okay, I'm pausing it here because there are certain things that I want to address that she said really, really quickly. First, the fundraising agreement. That was kind of an eye-opener for me because I knew there was something up, but the fundraising agreement where she said something around the fact that they were able to raise, I think it was like around almost $1 million, like 900 something thousand dollars from donors instead of the normal cap of $3,300 that is typically in place. So the fundraising agreement, before I get into that, I just want to note that there is a cap in place. So for federal candidates and campaigns, you can only raise, I believe she said it was 3,300. I feel like it changes. I think in the state of Georgia, it's like 2,800 or something like that. But at that point, you cannot raise any more. Now, you can donate at one time that amount 3 times, because then it can suffice for the primary, the general, and I believe a runoff. So I think you can do it 3 times. But if you don't make it out of the primary, you got to send that money back that's supposed to go towards the general, and you can't spend it in the primary. So there are a lot of rules around that. But the fundraising agreement that she was talking about between the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, and the Harris campaign that allowed them to bypass the 3,300 individual contribution gap is primarily based on this concept. It's called a joint fundraising committee. And here is how it works. So they created these joint fundraising committees that allow the DNC and the Harris campaign to establish joint fundraising activities and enabled them to put in resources and contributions. This structure allowed them to raise money for both the campaign and the party simultaneously. So it's like, I'm donating to the DNC, but I know my money can be utilized for her campaign as well as the DNC. Why does this matter? Because the party is not capped, not in the same way that the campaigns are, but the candidates are. So what she was able to do is say, okay, these individual contributions that can go to a specific campaign that typically sits at a cap at $3,300 per person per election, these contributions now can be made to a joint fundraising committee and can collect funds for multiple candidates and party activities. But the thing is, this means that donors can now give larger sums of money when they contribute to this joint entity, allowing them to support various aspects of the campaign and the party as a whole. Well, apparently the main fundraising focus was the Harris campaign. So that means that all this money that was raised was able to pretty much go to her. So when you see things where you're like, what in the world is how are these people raising so much money when you have these little bitty caps that are on every single donor? How is that happening? Well, here's a way that that's happening. Because when it comes to super PACs and PACs, a little more insight. If you have a PAC, like my husband and I own a PAC right now. Should my husband decide to run for office again, that PAC will either have to get shut down or thrown into the hands of someone who has absolutely nothing to do with the campaign and will not be communicating with the campaign. So there are restrictions on being able to use your PAC money. So this is another way that they can do that. Now, another point that she made was polling. She talked about polling. And I have a love-hate relationship with polling and pollsters because I believe it's just extremely too easy to manipulate them. There are certain ways you can ask questions. There are things that you can leave off. I remember there was a poll during my husband's Senate race with Herschel Walker, and I believe it read something along the lines of, would you support President Trump and Herschel Walker? I think it was something like that. But it didn't say and Republicans for the Senate race, or it was just the way they worded it. So it looked like everyone was voting for Herschel, when in fact that may not have necessarily been the case. So that's something that I'm always tricky about that. Then I saw like these internal polls, and you don't know how people are tracking that. So it gets really, really weird. But anytime humans are involved, and humans are definitely involved in the polling process, it really makes me wonder sometimes, because humans can be manipulated. And I always get a little concerned about that, which means that they can have error in polls for just, for several different reasons, several different ways. So the point that she was making was not that polling was wrong, but she was upset at the fact that she wants to know, when did you know that Kamala was not going to win? When did you see that the polling was off? So I really, really think that that's something that is important to note. Polling is fine, but you do have to do your own internal polling, and you do have to pay attention to momentum. So, all right, next clip.
Logistically, like as a position strategically, do you think you have a position? The way you're talking to me, the way you're talking to Fox, the stories that you're telling, will you be ostracized? Will you be blackballed? Do you have any future formally with Democrats?
Well, the amount of clout and money that I bring to the table, I mean, good luck without it.
Well, and
you've
pointed out, you've communicated to me also, Lindy, you're not alone. You're just the one saying it out loud.
I'm not scared, because I have hundreds of messages from, around the world, but also dozens of donors who are constantly texting me every day, telling me to stay the course. And I know who's going to run for president in 2028. I happen to be friends with them. I'm going to be fine. One of them even appointed me commissioner of Pennsylvania. And it's the candidate at the top who determines the hierarchy. I think out
who's going to run?
Okay, it's the same people,
Lindy,
who are there right now are going to be nowhere to be found. Well, hopefully, they're leaving right now. They're all fleeing for the exits.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
You did say something else though that I have to follow up on. Okay, and that is, you already know who's going to run for president in 2028 as a Democrat. Who?
Oh no, I always do this. Well, I know someone who's, when I ran for Congress, I sent a lot of cold emails, and not everyone replied, but one person did, and his name was Josh Shapiro. And he's an extraordinarily popular governor in my state. He's a moderate, which suits me. I'm a moderate. And so if I were a betting woman, I would bet that he's running. And there are other people that I'm friends with who are also running, and we'll see. But obviously, I'm biased to people from my own home state.
Such as? You just dropped another little hint that I always have to follow up on. Josh Shapiro, and you said other people you know as well. Such as who?
You guys probably know Gavin Newsom. And yeah, that's the extent of I can't imagine. I don't have an existing relationship with like Gretchen Whitmer, but I certainly do with Josh. We've been allies for a long time. He's just a good guy.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Okay, so here I am again. Okay, I have a love-hate relationship with her response about the clout and money, right? And because it just shows that there was a lot of influence that she has, and money does influence in politics. However, I would like it if she would have said something like, look, they would be terrible to get rid of me because I know what it's going to take for us to win, or because I have such a deep connection with the people. But you know what? She kept it real. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love the authenticity, but I hate the response. That being said, moving on, she mentioned the 2028 presidential race, which I thought was interesting. So Josh Shapiro was supposed to be Kamala's VP pick. She went with Waltz, I personally believe, because of another negative side of populism, but we'll get into this a little bit more in the final segment. However, I personally believe that she went with Waltz because Josh Shapiro was Jewish, and there are a lot of people on the Democrat side, a lot of young people who are not happy with Israel right now, and I think that she felt like it would hurt her. Anyway, that's just my thought, just my little 2 cents. But anyway, so Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom. Are we shocked? We knew Gavin Newsom probably be on there.
As you look back on this and you're seeing what's happening now, money fleeing, donors pulling, the party apparatus itself and its leadership being hollowed out. In your mind, you know, all of you being led falsely while you're continuing to raise money on false promises. Do you look back now on the past, let's call it 2 months of the campaign for Kamala, and say all of this is due to rampant incompetence, idiocy, novice, people who don't know what they're doing, and this is why they were so deluded in thinking they had a chance to win while still raising money? Or do you think it was fraudulent? People like these lists of celebrities and many more, like vultures around a dead body, making money off of this thing when they damn well knew it wasn't going to come to fruition. Was it incompetence or was it fraud?
Well, my lawyer would tell me to stay away from the second, so I don't subject myself to a defamation case. That's my gut instinct. But I will say, I was speaking with a fellow donor. She's very active as well. And we were just talking about how did they tell us to keep fundraising despite knowing that they were going to lose, because they knew that for the next 4 years they were going to be in the wilderness and there wouldn't be big checks. So did they use this opportunity to get as many big checks as possible? Do you see what I mean? Because if they knew that Trump was going to win, the torrent, the avalanche of checks would just stop, because we wouldn't be raising for anything. So did they do everything they can to just, squeeze every bit they could out of this cow? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think ultimately it's a multitude of factors, probably greed, incompetence, and because there's so many cooks in the kitchen. You had Obama people, Biden people, Harris people. Yeah.
And you told me this weekend on Fox and Friends that the relationship between the Biden camp and the Kamala camp could not have been worse. We saw some of that yesterday in the icy get together between Jill Biden and Kamala Harris, and it predated her run for presidency. You told me it goes back.
That started in 2019
her under
on the
him
debate stage
as
on
vice
June
president.
28th. I remember just when Kamala Harris accused Biden of being racist. Jill never forgave that.
Right. And did that iciness bleed down at the lowest levels, like the staffers for Biden versus the staffers for Kamala?
I was with Joe Biden the next day in San Francisco. That's why I remember it so vividly. We did a fundraiser for him at Doug Hickey's house, former ambassador. And I remember people being just shocked that Kamala Harris would do that. And she only enjoyed a temporary bump too. And I mean, obviously she didn't even make it to the first primary. So Joe Biden was willing to let it go. It's Jill Biden that held on to that grudge. And of course, Anita Dunn, who famously holds on to Biden's grudges for him. And you know who led Future Forward, Kamala Harris's super PAC? Anita Dunn was involved in that. So this whole thing is, oh my goodness, I'm going to get in so much trouble. Yeah. But But it's the same
And
cast of characters.
But
What'd you say?
last thing on this, tell me in the play where the cast of characters from the Obama camp play into this Kamala Biden drama.
If you want to know what Obama is thinking, you just listen to Jon Favreau and that gang. And they are currently just torching the place down. I think the most interesting thing that John has said, I actually saw John last month at the Kamala fundraiser. The most interesting thing that John has said in the past week is that at the point when Biden dropped out of the race, Trump was on the path to winning 400 electoral college votes. I totally believe that. And given the fact that Kamala Harris lost a popular vote, that's totally within the realm of possibility. So
on that final note, do you believe it would have been better with Biden or better with Kamala?
That's such a hard question because with all due respect to President Biden, he's no longer as cognitively fit as he used to be. I'm trying to be euphemistic. And as you saw with Kamala Harris, it was a bloodbath. As I said on Fox before, it was a red wedding style defeat. It was just beyond a shellacking. We lost in literally every demographic, I think, except senior citizens.
Okay, a lot to unpack in this final clip. Again, you can go, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go into the description box and watch it completely through without my commentary. But last bit on this final clip. Okay, it's a lot to unpack here. One, he asked her a question. Do you think it was incompetence or fraud? And she said, it's not incompetence, basically, but I'm avoiding the term fraud. I mean, I love-hate relationship with the way she communicates because she keeps it real. The big checks to cover debt. So I do believe that they saw that their campaign finance team saw that they were in debt, and they saw that they were going to be in debt, particularly because when you lose, people typically throw a debt relief party if you win, where it's like, help me pay off these debts and we're going to go forward. The truth of the matter is a lot of donors are just giving that final donation to show support, and then it'll help to clear up any back debt that you may have. Because, I mean, a lot of campaigns overspend. They do. That being said, it's hard to do a debt relief party when you lose. And it's even harder when you have to raise millions of dollars. Typically, it's like a couple of thousand, maybe $12,000, $13,000 here or there. And these are smaller races. I don't know on a national level. I'm assuming it could be a lot more, but I don't think it's like millions more. Okay, I think it's like 20 million more. But either way, so I understood where she was coming from. So when she said that they were still fundraising, knowing they were losing, that is a problem. Because if you know you're losing, stop taking people's money. You don't get to write this off on your taxes. You don't get it back. So let's just stop taking people's money. But anyway, that leads me to consultants and greed. I do believe that there's an element of greed that can come from consultants. I don't think all consultants are doing that. I do think that having a consultant is not a bad idea, particularly if you are running for office for the first time, because they understand the lay of the land a lot better than you. But I don't necessarily think consultants are necessary in every race. But are there greedy consultants? Absolutely. And I do believe that Kamala felt like she needed to give back to some particularly Black consultants or Black people that were part of this, because there's this weird theory in the Black community that, the white people are getting everything. So, even if it means committing fraud, we need to look out for Black people. It's not cute at all, but get it. Anita Dunn. Let's look her up, right? So Anita Dunn, her being involved in Harris's super PAC, very interesting. When she said that Anita is not a fan of Kamala, but yet she's run the super PAC. That goes back to what I said earlier. Remember, I was like, in super PACs, you typically find yourself in a situation where you cannot communicate with the campaign. So they throw somebody else on it, and that they're hoping that they are going to manage that super PAC and push out messaging that's going to be in alignment where you're going, just from kind of like listening to the campaign, because you cannot collude. So I find that interesting that her apparently opposition was somehow also running her super PAC. That is something that's interesting, pretty diabolical if you really think about it. The fact that she said that they were showing Trump having 400 electoral college votes prior to Biden dropping out. Yeah, that's why they formed this coup and pushed him out. And I have a theory. As to why Kamala spent that much money and why she spent it the way she did. And I'm going to share it after the break. You're listening to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship. And yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you missed majority of the show, which you did, it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate you catching the last segment. Don't worry. If you prefer the radio version of this, then please tune in to our encore episode that airs at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, right here on Extra 106.3. And if you want to go back and listen to the playback, you can do so by going straight to our YouTube show. Right now, we have our video option of the podcast and show that is airing. And you can just make sure that you click on that and listen to that. And you can start from the beginning. But please, 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 like, comment, share, subscribe, do something, please. It helps me so much. And it's free to you. So I really, really appreciate it. And again, if you're a podcast girly or guy and you really, really like to just listen to the audio version of things, and you want to just play it back without catching it on the radio or going to YouTube, my podcast drops every single Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. So this entire show would be there as well. The full clip of this interview is in the bio. So if you're watching on YouTube, so don't worry. Today's table topic is the deceitfulness of politics. And what you heard before the break was a portion of the Will Cain podcast. He's a Fox News contributor or host. I believe he's a host. Yes, a Fox News host. And he interviewed Lindy Li, who was a DNC finance chair, as well as part of the finance committee and the finance team for the Harris campaign. And to close, I want to close with my thoughts on why I believe that the Kamala Harris team chose to spend their money the way they did. And I believe it does link to the negative side of populism. Populism is just a political approach that we see playing out as of lately, way more so than it has in the past. It's kind of have elements of it throughout every campaign, but it's really taking place heavily now. And it doesn't work, in my opinion, if it doesn't hit its main goal. And the main goal is to represent the interests and the concerns of ordinary people. It's them trying to release this form of relatability that makes you think that they're one of you. So to do this, you have to pretend to be one of them. and I say pretend because if you're working in politics and if you're in a position where you're running for president, you have experienced things and seen things that makes you a little bit different from all of us, right? You've had certain experiences, you have a certain vantage point that we necessarily don't have. So trying to act as if you're on the same level as everyone else when you have a lot more access and a lot more information is very difficult, but it can be done. And oftentimes it's done by contrasting ordinary people or the everyday voter against this perceived image of the elites or the establishment while you're being one of them, which is where the tricky part comes in. It's the idea that if you can just pin people against the government while also convincing them that the government is good, but only if you are either in it or running it. That to me is what populism is. And Kamala Harris had an issue that followed her from the first time that she ran for president. It's the issue that put her in a position where she was that caused her to be standing on a stage with President Biden, who then became her running mate, but at the time was her opposition. So as she stood on that stage to run for president in 2019, she called him a racist. She basically talked about being bused and all that stuff, and she called him a racist. And her issue was never her base as it relates to just like the hardcore progressive Democrats are going to vote Democrat no matter what, and Republicans. But her issue has always been her identity. People didn't know how to take her. They want to believe that she's Black because she's the AKA, because she likes to, do Black things, and she's very culturally aware, I guess, to a certain degree. But anyway, it's like you want to embrace her as a Black person, but something is just not quite hitting, right? Kamala's issue has always been with Black voters. It's always been with Black voters. She has, from the moment that she was at 2% overall in the presidential race in 2019, she just never recovered. She cannot get the true support of Black voters because Black people do not see her authentically as a Black person. And in order for her to win, the Democrats must maintain the Black vote. I believe they have to get at least around 85% in order for her to win. And she was dropping. And I think that's where every Democrat, I think they got to maintain, I think it's around either 80 to 85% that they have to grab of the Black vote for Democrats to really be in the game, because that vote is Black people, we have voted with the Democrat Party 93% for over decades. I think it's the last 50 years. So there's been a dependency on the Black vote. And she literally spent billions and billions of dollars to win the affection and the approval of Black voters because she needed that number to come up. And Black voters happened to see through her charade long before November. So she had to pretty much pay off the right people, which I think she did. I mean, if your goal was to pull in Black people, and this is looking at it hindsight, but when you're in the middle of it, you think about who are the people you need to pull in. She pulled in Oprah. She pulled in Al Sharpton. She pulled in Lizzo, Meg the Stallion, Eminem. She pulled in people from all across the spectrum of Black culture. And she got the right endorsements. I mean, she got Beyonce, she got Jay-Z. I mean, good Lord, every major Black person. I think Kerry Washington was somewhere walking around. So I think every major Black person saw that she absolutely did the right thing as it relates to trying to get the approval of Black people. But it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work was because the groundwork was already laid. And I believe that it would have worked if it wasn't for two things. One, social issues only work when the economy is stabilized. When the economy is not stabilized, the money will take precedent. The economy is always in the political game, but it's going to take precedent when we're in a situation where the economy is not stabilized. And two, Hollywood and celebrities right now are just not being seen as establishment. Like they are, I mean, are now being seen as establishment. They are being seen as a useful tool, probably because they all say the same thing and they sound like robots. So now people are like, ugh, I'm not there. And then you had the younger generation, right? The younger generation was already upset about the whole situation with Gaza and Hamas and Israel and all that stuff and the universities. So she was losing young people, and she felt like she could make up the difference with Black people and Black voters, because younger voters are typically more vocal, but they don't necessarily vote. So, you know, I think she was a little concerned about that. However, this particular election, we did see something different, because President Trump was able to pull in, I believe it was around 34% of the young vote, which is major. However, it's really good for the Republican Party, because now you have younger people that are looking at the party, but it definitely, that definitely hurt her. So what was the thing that cost her the election? It was inauthenticity. It wasn't bad spending. She spent her money exactly where she needed to spend it, because she was losing the Black vote and she needed that to maintain. But it was her inauthenticity that caused her to lose this. So what does this mean? It means that populism should not be a political strategy standing alone by itself. It should be a tool that is used during the political process, coupled with sound policy and authentic relatability. That, to me, is what was missing in her election process. No one was complaining about all the celebrities. Matter of fact, people were praising it when it was happening. The complaints that we heard was the fact that she could not articulate sound policy and she did not come off believable. That is why she lost. They can complain about the finances now because their money is gone and they won't get anything in return. But ultimately, that's what it is. Again, if you're on YouTube, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those great things. Totally helps me. And until I see you again, enjoy your families. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.